Hey everybody, it's Matthew. I want to thank you all for clicking on this video, and this is hopefully going to be a series. I plan to make a series. I'm committed to doing so, and this series is going to talk to those of you who are in IT or who desire to go into IT about how to get into leadership. So the nexus of this video actually started because of my other videos where people see my house or they see my grill or they see my car and they say, "What do you do?" And I tell them what I do. And then they want to know more about how to do what I do. Most of which actually are people that are in the IT field, the IT space. And they either desire to go into leadership or they have been offered leadership opportunities and they have rejected them because they didn't feel adequate, kind of an imposter syndrome thing. So what I'm going to do with this series is I'm going to break it down. I haven't been ignoring you, so I know some of you have listed in different comments and stuff, and you may not have seen any content. And the reason is that this type of stuff I'm doing, I do stream of conscious, right? Sometimes I want to share some project I'm working at home. Sometimes I'm working on some grilling thing or whatever. And sometimes I'm talking about the car or some other activity. This stream of consciousness, I don't do a lot of planning for those things. But this is my business. This is what I do, right? So I want to make sure that I'm intentional and that I'm thoughtful and that I'm giving you content that can actually help you. I'm giving you what we call game, right? So I want to make sure that I'm providing you with the best game possible so that you can be successful in what you do. Now, the caveat there is that whatever anybody tells you, research it, validate it, and internalize it. Meaning that you have to make it what's best for you. You have to make sure that it fits what you're doing, but you also need to make sure that the person that's telling you these things, all these experts on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, that they're not full of shit and they're not just giving you something to try to sell you a package. So with that said, I'll tell you the three things that I'm going to talk about in this video. So this first video is about you. The most important cog in this wheel to leadership is you, that you need to do work on you. There's some fundamental things that you need to understand about yourself. And we'll go a little bit and peel some layers back and how that starts more centrally, and then concentrically we'll work out toward the outer layers of what's going on. So this isn't a metaphysical thing. I'm not going to try to tell you about meditation and those type of things. There are videos that do that, and I don't not believe in those things. Sorry. I don't not believe in those things, but that's not what this is about. And that's not something that I'm going to work with you on. Okay. So the three things I'm going to talk to you about today is understanding yourself, understanding your organization, and understanding what your role is in your organization. And there may be some interconnective tissue in between those things, but those are the main topics I want to discuss today. But before I do that, you click on this video. Some of you don't know who I am, don't know anything about me. I encourage you to go to my LinkedIn page, Matthew B. Parks Sr., and look me up. I am a legitimate leader. I'm not someone that is posing as this. This is what I do for a living. I don't use that term leader, IT leader, as a sham or as a cudgel or any other type of brag. This is what my job title literally is. So Matthew Parks, I am Vice President of IT and Security at a medium to large size nonprofit located in the Southeast. We have 25 total buildings that we manage, but we say that we're 22 locations as far as how that works out, including our national headquarters, which is in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been in the IT business since 1995. I've considered myself a generalist, and I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. And I have been named as the IT Technology Leader of the Year here in Jacksonville, Florida by the Jacksonville Business Journal. I was in the inaugural class, as a matter of fact. I have been twice as the Jacksonville IT Council, which is a sub-council of the Chamber of Commerce. So I've been the Jacksonville Chamber of Commerce IT Council's president twice. I have sat on boards for local colleges, advising them on IT. And so those are just some of the things about my bona fide, if you want to ever look me up or whatever and take whether I'm telling you is legitimate. So having said all of that, one thing I will continue with is starting off the video. We're 5 minutes in. First thing I want you to do is take a look at yourself. Take a very hard self-inventory of your skill sets, your flaws, and you can T-chart them, you can do whatever, but take a look at yourself. Because if you're in a position to assume leadership, the first thing you're going to have to do is understand who you are. Because you have organizational principles that you will be charged with upholding. That's part of the job of being management and then leadership. Notice I don't use those two terms the same way. I teach an entire leadership course where I explain that managers and leaders are not the same thing. There is some overlap or some confluence, but there is not necessarily the same thing. It's kind of a thing where all toads are frogs, but not all frogs are toads. All ravens are crows, but not all crows are ravens. Those are the type of things that you have to understand when we talk about leadership, is that you may be a manager. And it was Admiral Grace who created COBOL, essentially, that said that you manage things and you lead people. So the first thing I want you to take a look at as you're taking your self-inventory is, do I have the capacity to learn and listen? And that's an important piece, because we have a lot of people who assume that leadership is the bossy thing where I'm telling people what to do and I'm expecting them to do this type of stuff. And yeah, there is a component of that, but it has to be chambered correctly. You have to take measure of your environment, of your situational, we call it situational leadership, where you have to understand that every action that you take is codependent on the situation, the team that you have. There are a lot of pieces that you have to understand. So that's the first thing I want you to understand is, do you take that self-inventory? Do you have tough skin? Because you're going to need it. Do you have the capacity to listen and learn? And from those, that takes us to our next objective in that listen and learn is, do you have the ability to adapt, to improvise and overcome? Because you will be presented on a daily basis with situations that you have no idea how to overcome. And you're going to have to improvise, you're going to have to adapt. And to do that, and when I say leadership, that doesn't mean necessarily that you personally are going to have to do that, which is, yes, you will have to do that. But you're also going to have to ascend to your team. If you're an individual contributor, maybe not as much. But if you're a manager of people, if you are a leader of people, you're going to have to deal with people problems. Guys who can't get to work on time because they may have a car problem, because they have some type of financial issue. Those type of things all play up, because once that happens here, then that can affect our scheduling for this person and how we have coverage for this team. Those things are all interconnected and very important to understand. So that's our first piece, is understanding you. And we'll go a little bit deeper into that, because even though I'm 9 minutes in, this is still a pretty superficial presentation of this topic. Again, I do an hour to 3 hours on this alone. Well, not this alone, but on the leadership topic. Once you've taken that self-inventory, once you've assessed what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what do I need to get better at? For me, for example, I'm a big picture guy. So for me, I can have the vision, but the thing about vision is that if you can't express it to other people, that's all it is a picture. You have to be able to take your vision and be able to work it down into details that other people can to fulfill. Because when you're explaining it to someone, when you're going to your leadership and you're looking for funding to pay for this project that needs to happen and it's going to cost an exorbitant amount of money, you have to be able to walk them through what that's going to look like. You got to be able to walk them through what the organizational pain points are going to be. Anytime you do deployments, that's an organizational pain point because there is a disruption in the productivity to be able to do those things. So for me, I'm a pretty good communicator. I'm a pretty good visionary. I can do details, but it was stringing all of those things together in a palatable way, which is the next piece, in a palatable way where people who were not technical, which are most of the people you're dealing with, particularly in business, to convert these into terms that they understand. I had to learn how to translate this years, decades of technical acumen that I've developed and accumulated over time and distilled them down into more palatable bite-sized pieces that didn't bore them and that didn't scare them, so that they were able to see not only my vision, but that we actually have a roadmap to achieve that vision. So that's me. That's one of the things that I've had to work on, is being able to present those in more timelines. I am afraid of timelines, and it may be a phobia. I may need to get some help for that. But the reason is that the minute that you put a date on paper, people will hold you to that date. And if any of you have ever run projects, you'll know that there are dependencies that are outside of your control that can stretch that project timeline, cause that, and you have to build in your slack, of course, meaning that you build in buffer time. So if you think that this project is going to be accomplished in 8 weeks, you better tell them 10, right? So you build in some slack time. If you come in under those 10 or even 8 weeks, you look like a hero. And it's not about looking like a hero. It's just about leaving yourself more time so that you can accomplish that goal, and taking that extra week to ensure that you have everything accomplished, right? So those are the type of pieces that you really have to be cognizant about as you're putting together your project plans and how you're going to develop this. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is developing that type of project acumen. A lot of folks that are in IT, you're very isolationist. I'm one of them. And you really don't want to be bothered. You'd rather just go in your office, close your door, that type of thing. But the problem that you have there is that when you're doing deployments, when you are running projects, I just mentioned that there are a lot of interdependencies that have to be accounted for, and a lot of those interdependencies are people, humans. So you have to create a collaborative mindset and accountability inside of those projects so that you are able to keep them on task and on time, or if they're not, hold whoever it is accountable for not being able to deliver their deliverables, yourself included. So start to do that even in the tickets that you're running, because that is the thing about help desk that people really overlook, is that it is a beautiful opportunity to learn how to project plan. Because every ticket that you work on potentially is a mini project, or it is a component of a larger project. Sometimes we get tickets where we have a problem and we're starting to troubleshoot, and we find out that that problem is due to a much larger problem. So if you start to recognize that this problem is actually something that's a larger project, now you have an opportunity to develop a muscle and to then also flex that muscle so that others recognize that you have this ability to bring projects to fruition. I'll give you an example. We had a model machine that we had from Dell. It was an all-in-one, and I had a hard drive failure pop up on the help desk. And one of the help desk persons, they went out, they bought a new hard drive, they replaced that one hard drive, and that was it. So I had another one, same model, fail, and it went out. They bought another one, it replaced. Another person on that same help desk noticed the same thing, that they also had 2 hard drive failures within a short period of time with a particular model, same model. And they walked into my office. They sat down and said, hey, I'm seeing a trend. And I'm like, what is your trend? And they told me that, hey, I have this model. They have the same hard drive, and they failed. So I said, okay. I just had somebody else order 2 different folks order hard drives as well for this particular model. And so he said, yeah, I've spoken with them as well. So it looks like this is a problem. So what solution do you offer? So that's a management thing, right? One of the things in management is that you're teaching the fish. So what I did, I know this is an aside, but this is an important part of the lesson that I don't often go into, is that I said, what is your solution? What do you offer? So now I'm empowering this person to tell me their ideas. This is that listen and learn piece so that we can then improvise and adapt. He told me that I think that we should look at all of the other hard drives, and if we have the budget, replace them, because we've already had, out of the 20 that we own throughout the organization, we've already had 20% to fail. So that's what we did. I was thinking the same thing, that the natural course of action is that if we have this many fail, let's go ahead and replace them. So what I told him to do is I said, well, let's find out what model is in all of these machines, and let's purchase the opposite competitive model. We don't want to buy, if we have a Western Digital that's failing throughout all of these machines, we don't want to buy another Western Digital to replace it, because I can't trust it. So let's buy the Seagate or some other model from Micron or whomever, so that we can replace it in the hard drive. So we were proactive, and I worked with him to establish a project plan so that we could go out to all of the different locations and replace these drives. We work with the team expressing, this is the issue, this is how we're going to resolve it, and this is how we're going to do so with the least amount of productivity impact on the organization. So that example shows that I had multiple folks having the same problem, but one person, because they had a project mindset, was able to recognize that this is something that was systemic, and if we attack it proactively from a systemic basis, that we would actually be able to attack. Hold on one second, sorry. I guess it's cool, but I never really got motorcycles with sound systems on them, but I'm not anyway. So recognizing that something is systemic means that you have the ability to, which is one of my other points that I want to bring up today, is you have to have the ability to zoom out. A lot of what we do in our business is that we are hunched over a bench, or we're staring at a screen, and we become singularly focused into that world that is presented to us. But when you're looking at it from an organizational perspective, you have to have the ability to zoom out and say, okay, how is this affecting me? How is this affecting the organization? Look at it from that organizational lens. How is this affecting my users? Right? So as we talked about working on you, and these are some of the things we'll talk about a little bit more, let's transition to our next point, is understanding your organization. So I work at a nonprofit that specializes in education and therapy and all these type of things. So it's incumbent on me to understand how that works. I don't have to be a therapist. I don't have to be a teacher or any other type of educator to do that. What I do need to understand is what we do and how it works, so that I can then apply the best technology solutions to improve productivity. So let me take a step back here. The primary function of any IT department in the world is to improve productivity, efficiency, communications in a secure, safe manner. That's it. That's it. And if you're not providing, if anytime you have downtime, that's productivity, loss of productivity costs you money as an organization. Any IT department that you work in the world has one thing in common. We're all red on the ledger, meaning that we are cost centers. We are not profit centers. We do not make money for the organization. We can help the organization recoup funds through investment and ROI, but we're cost centers. So when you look at those through those terms, and in my case, I have to understand things like revenue, because I need to know how we make our money so that I know what I can spend, how to be as fiduciary or fiscally responsible as possible with the monies that have been entrusted in me by these many outside sources and partners. So that means that when I look at a problem like that hard drive problem, that I have to examine it from an organizational lens. Every problem I have to look at from an organizational lens. You know, when I was younger, I would go in and fix a problem and I was done with that problem. Something else showed up a couple of more weeks, I would take care of that problem. But then as I started to mature, I started to realize and recognize that there's a gold mine of data that can help me be better and help me provide better service to my organization. So even at the help desk level, recognizing that I had an opportunity to extract and distill the information that I was being provided, because the thing about the help desk is that you touch every part of the organization. So you have an intimate knowledge of all of the people. You have the opportunity to build relationships. And these things will help you understand your organization, what it does, what it needs, most importantly, from you. And that starts with you zooming out. Now, the reason I say zoom out and not back out like some folks say is that you need to be able to zoom in sometimes too. Remember when I talked about earlier, when I talked about having to be visionary at this level and then present this vision based on the organizational direction and how we can support it, and then be able to zoom in incrementally at different aspects of the organization to be able to fulfill that vision. You have to be able to have that level of focus, flexibility to be able to look at something and say, okay, how does this affect the organization? And ask yourself that question. What is the organizational impact? Maybe none, maybe a lot. And then that will help you establish, in which I advise you to do, if you are in leadership, your prioritizations. So you know that, okay, this is a P1, which means this is a complete craziness as far as how it affects the organization, or it could be a P5 or 6 or whatever, and you can set that scale however you want to show that this is something that's project related. We'll get to it when we get to it. So also continuing, excuse me, what the hell is going on? So discussing, sorry, so I'm in the parking lot and somebody's blowing their horn. So we talked about understanding yourself, and we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks and months. We talk about learning how to zoom out, and because you need to understand your organization. So we've got you, we've got your organization, understanding what it does. So now that we've got those two things together, this is where that last piece in this puzzle for today is. I need you to understand what your role and your team's role is in that organization, which requires you to understand who you are, what your team does, It requires you to understand what your organization does and to understand your organization. So once you understand those two things, you can fit those two pieces together, those two cogs in the wheel together to start your machinery of how you're going to keep that machine, how you're going to drive that machine. Is that? So now I'm there. I understand how my organization works, understand how I contribute to my organization, how I contribute to my team, which contributes to my organization. I understand these things. So what does that mean to me? That means that kind of what I mentioned earlier as a prelude, but I'm going to go back to it, that I understand that my job to my organization is to provide them with a secure path to be productive, efficient, to communicate both internally and externally, and to do so with as much or the least amount of administrative effort as possible. So understanding what I do in my organization and that helps me to establish what my organizational goal is, or my goal for my organizational goal, how I intend to add to the organization, contribute to it and its goals. It also helps me to shape, not only to guide my team, but it also helps me to shape my team. So if I understand that the organizational goals are to do X, Y, and Z, then, to borrow from Jim Collins, I now know which people I need to put into the right seats on the bus. That may mean that I have to, I may have some ambitious folks on the team, and I may give them opportunities to step outside of their current role into new roles that fit the organizational direction. That may mean that I have to train up some folks that I see potential in so that they can fulfill not only the role they're in, but maybe a future role. Those are the type of organizational decisions that you have to make. What type of equipment I need to buy, because I need to look ahead and look around. Being an IT person, it's not enough for you to be able to look ahead. Looking down the road, you have to be able to look around corners, because the landscape in technology changes so rapidly. It changes at what we would call a hyperpace, where you literally can wake up tomorrow and there's something that is earth-shaking that has happened. This happened in November of 2022. I woke up, October, no problem. I woke up in November 1st or 2nd, and there was this new thing out there called ChatGPT, and it was raising hell. So overnight, I had to learn, how is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect my job? How is my organization going to react to it? How is this going to affect my organization? How do I protect my organization? Those are all questions that I had to ask that I didn't have to ask the day before, or the X amount of years up into that day before. I never had to ask that question. It was something that I won't say completely took me off guard, but the reception and the explosion of this technology completely took us off guard. Something else that happened was the proliferation of TikTok and the legislation, because of the regulatory bodies that we're bound to, against TikTok, that prevented us from using TikTok. So those are organizational pressures that we felt, where we had to understand that even before the TikTok, which it wasn't a TikTok ban, I hate that term, but even before we got into the whole TikTok good or bad, decisions were made here in Florida, where we were not allowed to utilize TikTok for any of our business related pieces. And we had to act accordingly, which means that we effectively banned it in our organization, had to block it whenever it came up, any URLs, all of those things were cascading. And when you look at those things, you have to be able to take measure of those things. Do I have external pressure, external forces that are regulating me into doing things or not doing things? And how does that affect the organization? Because I still have an organization of humans. All organizations are human. And those humans not only want to do things, but they may have jobs that require them to do certain things. And in the case of TikTok or in Facebook, the platforms that they need access to may be platforms that are under scrutiny from the U.S. government or your state or local government. So I understand my I understand who I am. I understand how I contribute to my team. I understand how my team contributes to the organization. I understand my organization. I know what my organization does. So with those 5 components, I then go into that last point that I made, is that now I have that ability to zoom up and down that lattice, up and down those 5 points that I just made, to be able to make decisions, to be able to, whether it's a hiring decision, whether that's a purchase decision, whether that's a deployment, whether that is security, all of those things are dependent on starting with you and your core principles, who you are, how have you adapted. If a case where I may be weak in something that I don't have the ability to supplement, can I supplement it externally with another person? Those are questions that you have to ask yourself when you start to become a leader, because it no longer is about you. It's no longer essentially about your team. It becomes about your contribution to the organization, to that bottom line. And whether you are contributing to the bottom line, or in our cases, whether we take away from the bottom line today so that we can help the organization grow its bottom line over time, that's kind of what we do. You have to be able to understand fully what those components are and how best you can succeed. So this is the first video, hopefully, of others. I have committed that I'm going to make time to do these. Since they have been requested pretty regularly from folks. Not that I'm some, big time YouTube following and that type of thing, but it's more than not, and I've had pressure from my son to do these. I've had pressure from my wife to do these videos. So here we are. Let's start here. I'll pick up some other tenets I wrote down a bunch of other things that I want to share in this case, and I want to make sure that we have a good, safe platform. So I didn't mention this in the beginning. I do thank everybody who stayed the whole half hour to watch me run my mouth about leadership and you. I also want to ask you if you would be so kind as to leave me a like. If you have any questions, please drop that in the comments. I do make an effort to get through all my comments from all the other videos. And I would ask you that if you like this content, subscribe, because it helps me understand, and share, because it helps me to understand what content you like, if you appreciate this. Because again, I do have people who ask for it, but not everybody may need it. Not everybody may care. One other thing I do want to mention is that I did tell this, I did run through this from an IT-centric lens, but leadership is leadership. And a wise woman once told me, a former boss, told me that you have to eat the fish and throw away the bones, something her grandmother used to tell her. So what I want you to do is to filter what you're hearing from me and everybody else, to, again, internalize what you're hearing, vet and verify what you're hearing, so that you understand that these principles apply more universally. So again, I've been in IT a very long time, and I'm consider myself a generalist. I do have some specialists in me, but one thing that has been consistent is that I've had some good teachers, going all the way back to my days at UPS as a leader, that not only instilled the management piece, which again, I'm not going to say management is easier because it is work, but leading people takes a different skill set. And hopefully we can get you there too. So with that, I'm going to sign off, going to turn my car on so I can get the AC back on. Believe it or not, it's February and I'm in a short sleeve shirt in February down here in Florida in Jacksonville. So I think the high was 85. But in any case, please like and subscribe. Please, if you're enjoying this content, holler at me in the comments and let me know you want more, and I'll try to make sure I come through for you. All right. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Y'all have a good day.